Visiting Sergei Ivanovich Suhonos with the theme of universal expediency. Sergei Ivanovich, candidate of technical sciences, professor of the Russian Academy of Science, member of the Russian Philosophical Society, member of the Russian Space Society, member of the Moscow Space Club, full member of the Academy of Geopolitical Problems, teacher of the School of Common Sense. Sergei Ivanovich, hello.
Hello. Yes, I can start right.
Yes.
Good afternoon, dear viewers and listeners of this channel. I would like to say a rather important thing first. The fact is that we are living in a difficult transition time, and each of us is thinking how to survive in this time, what to do specifically every day, every hour, every week. But it turns out, from my point of view, that this transitional moment, it is so global, that without understanding the globality of the transition, we will not even be able to act adequately and synchronously with this transition every day. Therefore, we need to tune into this transition. In order to tune into it, it is necessary to rise above the ordinary, above our problems, above our everyday life, above our economy. It is necessary to rise above politics, above the problems of our country. It is even necessary to rise above the global problems, including the pandemic problems that are rolling over us now. It is necessary to rise as high as we can theoretically rise at all, based on the knowledge base that humanity has provided us in recent years, centuries. Why? Because the global nature of the changes that are coming to us now, let's say so, is incredibly high. There has never been such a global scale of change in the entire history of human civilization, frankly speaking. Therefore, no one has any experience of going through these changes. There are no communists, there are no liberals, there are no globalists, in fact. And this experience does not exist in any thinker, nor in any person. And the only thing we can do in this situation is to make some model of this transition. Like any model, it will naturally be simplified, but everyone knows the wonderful idea that it is better to have a bad model. It is better to have a bad plan than to have no plan at all. Here, if you imagine this image that we are walking along mountain passes, walking through the mountains. We need to go out into some valley of happiness. So we are moving from one, so to speak, from one path to another. We go along the river, there are clamps, we need to cross this river to the other side. Stones come underfoot, some problems come. And all this must be taken into account, of course, every minute of our hike. But at the same time, we must not lose sight of this goal. We must not forget where we are going, what we are going for. And we must understand that we are going on a very long hike, which is actually becoming very interesting for us. Because we are not going on this hike by ourselves, but we are going as some kind of humanity, as our ancestors, as our descendants. In other words, we participate in this great transition as a part, as a link in a large chain of generations. And only when we feel like this link in this long chain of generations, then we will comprehend what is happening now. So we have only two options. The first option is not to pay attention to these global ideas, not to pay attention to the global plan. To live with momentary problems every day. And the second option is to take some model as a basis, go to the highest horizons on the basis of this model, take this model into account, and constantly check with this model in our daily life. I believe that with the second option, we have some chance to move in a directional way, but with the first option, we will feel in any case like a chip that will throw stormy waves, stormy currents in the near future. We will feel like a particle in Brownian motion, which is rushing around the field of life, doesn't know where to stick her. Of course, for many people, what I'm going to tell you will seem very unusual and too abstruse, too systematic. There are people who live on a whim. They already know where to go and what to do. But there are people who need to have a mental plan after all. That's the kind of people my performance is intended for, right? Here. At the same time, I repeat once again that when we walk along a mountain path, we definitely need to take into account every step. Otherwise, the leg will turn up and we will not get anywhere. We need to take into account where we will cross, which pass we will pass, and so on. But at the same time, we definitely need to remember where we are going, and most importantly, for what and for what purpose we are going on this trip at all. Because, well, I want to say again, of course, it's sad to remind you, but each of us is mortal. And sooner or later, we will all leave the plan of this earth. And if you are a materialist and think only about this short life of ours, then all this becomes completely uninteresting. We have to live every day, every second, go to the shops, and so on. Here. But I believe that we live forever. Our life continues from generation to generation, from one incarnation to another incarnation. And so we need to set a plan for many, many millennia. They're not even on their own life. Well, for those who don't know me, I think that 99% of those who see me for the first time are present here. I can show 2 books. I have 25 of them written, fundamental. Maybe someone saw them. Here is the first book of the large-scale harmony of the universe. This book, I have it on my website, was written in the 2000th year. Here I outlined my idea of the evolution of the universe, of the large-scale harmony that exists there. And the second book is called The Relay Race of Civilizations. This is a fairly thick work in which I analyzed the entire history of human civilizations, relying on previous authors such as Toynbee, Huntington, and so on. And I came to a conclusion that I will share with you today. Well, here is a rather long preface, an introduction to the cycle that I want to explain to you now, my vision. Now we will proceed to, strictly speaking, the essence of the question. The essence of the question is that we live in a universe that is constantly evolving and becoming more complex. Despite the fact that you have probably heard that there is a second beginning of thermodynamics, that this second beginning of thermodynamics leads to the fact that we are waiting for thermal death and degradation. I want to reassure you, the universe does not expect any degradation, no thermal death. There are many reasons. I could tell them in detail, but there is no time, so I will say only one thing. The second principle of thermodynamics is indeed a working model, a working theory, but it only works for closed systems. No one has ever proved, and is unlikely to be able to prove, that our universe is a closed system. And since this system is not closed, it is not threatened with thermal death, and it becomes more complicated. Many billions of years are becoming more complicated. If we now descend from the universal plane to the earthly one, we will see that 4 billions of years on the planet Earth. There have been enormous evolutionary changes that have led life from the primary cells to what we now see around us, to the sociosphere, to humanity, which has gone into space. These are the stages of a long journey, and there were several very grandiose, global, principled steps at the stages of this path. Step 1. Life originated in the ocean, in the aquatic environment, and it has existed there 4 billions of years. This is the second one. Life has come to land. When she came ashore, she was already mastering a different environment. And this, too, has been going on for 1 billion years. Somewhere 500 or 600 million years ago, according to scientists, life rose into the air, birds appeared. Thus, life has mastered the third medium, air. Physics knows for states of matter, solid, liquid, gaseous, and plasma. What state has remained undeveloped? Yes, plasma is fire. And when man appeared, it was not for nothing that Prometheus endowed him with fire from the very beginning in Greek mythology. It is a person who uses fire, and not only uses, and is not afraid, he uses fire actively, and without fire. A person would not be able to achieve the results in which we see around us. We would not even be able to participate without fire in the process in which we are now with you, the communication in which we are participating with you. Thus, it is obvious that the evolution of life on the planet went in stages when it reached a dead end. When everything that was possible was mastered, water, land, and air, Then life, let's conditionally say. So mythologically a little bit, she suddenly realized that in order to go into space, she needed not enough birds. Eagles will not fly into space. And she created man, you and me. For what? So that we can go into space. All signs indicate that man appeared on the planet with one main goal, the release of life into space. We have considered the second point with you. Now let's look into this very cosmos. There are two versions. The first version is that life on planet Earth is the only one that only exists in the universe. Absolutely, from my point of view, a ridiculous version, because it is difficult to assume that in the living, developing universe. Planet Earth, we have hundreds of millions of such planets only in our galaxy, and there are tens of billions of galaxies. Therefore, for sure there are other lives, and for sure some of these other lives came before us to go into space, mastered, came out. And now, as they say, alien civilizations are plowing the expanses of the universe on their UFO-type ships. So the question arises, what is critical for them? The answer that is critical for all living systems is very simple, time. Time is merciless to any systems. Time destroys man, time destroys mountains, time destroys civilizations, time destroys the planetary system. Sooner or later the stars perish, and galaxies also perish. In other words, nothing is eternal in this universe. And these space alien civilizations also have a lifetime. And then a very simple question arises. But if these mighty universal civilizations have an understanding that they do not live forever, then what way out can they find from this non-eternity? The answer lies, so to speak, on the surface. Exactly the same as all living things find. It is a continuation of itself in posterity. And therefore, any alien civilization should have, relatively speaking, children. It should give birth to new civilizations that will replace the outdated, powerful, but aging civilizations. From here, logically, we come to a very simple conclusion that most likely the Earth civilization is a fruit, more precisely, an embryo which was generated by some one alien civilization, perhaps a couple of alien civilizations. Maybe there were several of them. We absolutely don't care. That is, some alien civilizations, realizing that they will grow old sooner or later, they started growing a shift. And we are the very shift that should go into space and take the baton from the hands, or I do not know what they have there. These very alien civilizations, and take their place. And you know, I have a very proud thought here, that every new generation, it goes further than previous generations. Hence the conclusion that our earthly civilization, with all our culture, peculiarities, and so on, is so special and so strong, that it will go beyond these great cosmic civilizations. Then the appearance of man on earth becomes even more meaningful, even more important. In other words, humanity is a base, a platform, a germ, anything for the emergence of new life in the universe, intelligent life in the universe. And you and I are part of this process. And we are standing on the threshold. If I had told what I am telling now, I would have told it 100 years ago, in front of the smartest people. Then most people would not have taken me seriously. Why? Because who would have thought, even at the time of Tsiolkovsky, who was considered a city lunatic, that we really needed to go into space. There were some fantastic flights there. Now it has become commonplace. Now Elon Musk promises us flights to Mars, the exploration of Mars, and even the exploration of the galaxy. A lot of fiction has been written on this topic, and it has become a commonplace. But the purpose and meaning of this is not fully understood. Why? We will not be able to get out just like that, because in fact our bodies are not adapted for open space. And on our rockets we will not fly anywhere further than the solar system. That's for sure. Even I think we are unlikely to be able to escape beyond the orbit of the moon, because there is powerful radiation there. Therefore, a grand transformation awaits us. This grandiose transformation is the third problem that we must constantly keep in mind. Well, as if constantly remembering, I would say so. So, you and I have found, as it were, a model goal of the existence of all mankind. This is the interception of the baton from space civilizations. But in order to be born, we need to develop in the same way as a fetus in the womb. A 3-month-old fetus, an embryo, cannot be born. There are, of course, early births 7-month, 8-month, but the ideal option is when the baby in the womb develops to a state of sufficient harmony. So, here we can draw the same analogy for you and me, for humanity. We need to develop to a whole state, a harmonious state. And in order to develop to a whole harmonious state, we need to understand how development has been going on so far. This is where I have to include a presentation. I hope they will help me do it now, and tell a little about the history of the development of our human community from the point of view of the theory of civilization. Alexei, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Everything is fine. Are we turning on the relay? Or was it turned on from the very beginning? Yes, I turned it on. Okay, fine. You see, here's the name. This is a piece of my report, The Relay Race of Civilization. And now I'm going to flip through it. Well, as if here the screensaver is so mysterious, a blue-purple square. We will come to it at the end. And a small epigraph like this, but a little bit in order to remove the seriousness of the topic. Here, this is from the Master and Margarita. These are the words of Woland, well known to you. My fault. In order to manage, after all, you need to have an accurate plan for at least some decent period of time. Let me ask you, how can a person manage if he is not only deprived of the opportunity to make some kind of plan for a ridiculously short period of time, but for, say, 1,000 years? Really, how can we manage our lives if we don't have a plan for a ridiculously short period of 1,000, right? So, the story, the history of civilization. What is civilization? Civilization is a community of people who appeared in the Neolithic era, who, in addition to gathering and hunting, had cultural ways of cultivating land, building buildings and cities. They learned to cultivate the land, to feed the cattle, and from that moment they became civilizations. The very first civilizations were very simple. They lived in the foothills, gathered tree fruits and roots there, raised goats, and had small vegetable gardens. All of this can now be observed in the North Caucasus. This lifestyle has been perfectly preserved. Then the people who grazed cattle, they began to not fit in the foothills, and they went to the steppes. They went out into the great steppe, then set off. Some of them went in the other direction, and large nomadic civilizations, steppe civilizations, including Aryan civilizations, appeared. They walked on the steppes in the same way as the Mongolian herds are now, and some Kazakhs also grazed their animals in these very steppes. In the evenings, they sat around the campfire, looked at the starry sky, and since they had a lot of free time, they composed very interesting mythological, cosmological paintings. But after a while, the number of people increased so much that they began not to fit in the steppes. And then some of them came to the rivers. This is how river civilizations appeared. Then there were the marine ones, the continental ones, and finally the planetary space ones. Here are 4 great river civilizations that are taken from the encyclopedia: Egyptian, Babylonian, Indian, Chinese, red badges. All of them were formed by nomadic nomads from the Great Steppe. This is not my invention. This is a historical fact. How did they live? That's about it. That is, there were plant systems along the river. They grew cereals and ate at the expense of this. All 4 civilizations lived the same way. There were mainly cities, there were religions, there were temples, there was agriculture, mainly agriculture. They lived along, here is the green color of such and such an oasis, here, please, Egypt. You see, right, along the Nile River. Similarly, along the Tigris-Euphrates lived Mesopotamian civilization. It is Sumerian, it is Babylonian, it is Assyrian. You see, right? But the time came when another, different type of civilization appeared on their base, the civilization of the sea, the marine civilization. At first it was Greece around a small puddle, and then the Roman Empire arose on the basis of the ancient Greek civilization, which, as you can see on the map, surrounded the Mediterranean Sea from all sides. That is, it was the civilization of the sea. The sea was the center of this civilization. If no more than 10 million people lived in the previous river civilizations, then 80 million people lived here already in the Roman Empire at the time of its heyday. Time passed, and this civilization collapsed somewhere in the 500th year, well, in the 5th century of our era. Here. And after a while, another civilization appeared, a continental-type civilization, a land civilization. It is most often called the Great Mongol Empire, although the name of the Eurasian civilization can be attached to it. Gumilev spoke well about this and wrote, and you can attach the name of the Tartary. I will say one thing, that the USSR is the heir of the Soviet Union, of this great Eurasian civilization. And moreover, even geographers noted that the area of the USSR, with all friendly countries, actually exactly coincided with the area of the great Mongolian Empire at the time of its dawn. In other words, this territory is Eurasian, it lives its own life. She dresses in the great Mongol Empire, then in Tartary, then in the Russian Empire, then in the USSR. Now we have shrunk to Russia, but I think this situation will change over time, and this territory will restore its borders again, in a natural way. But the next step for continental civilization is oceanic civilization. This is Western civilization. It originated in Europe, and now it is entering an imperial phase. The Roman Empire, the analog of the Roman Empire, is the United States. Spinner spoke about this. As you can see, there are already a billion people here. This is the same golden billion. As you remember, 10 million Egyptian civilization, 80 million Rome, 160 land. And here it's already a billion. In other words, space is growing, the size of space is increasing, the number is increasing. It is logical to assume that the next step is to have nowhere on Earth to place another civilization. And it will be a planetary space civilization, according to my calculations, about 15 billion people. What it is, we can talk about it separately. Now we will not touch it deeply. So, if we look at the map of emerging civilizations, we will see an interesting thing, that, first of all, each new civilization appeared in its new geographical space. There has never been a repetition. Secondly, all these spaces, they are located between the 20th and 60th parallel of the Northern Hemisphere. You see it on the map, right? And thirdly, it's very interesting, they appear every 500 years. That is, the frequency of the appearance of a new civilization is not less than 500 years. Now I don't know whether it's worth it or not. If there are any questions about understanding what I said, that is, if someone does not understand something, he can ask questions so that he does not have a black hole in his mind. Alexei, does it make sense to understand the question? Anastasia, or let's move on.
Thank you, let's go on. Very interesting. Let's continue. The questions will be based on the result.
All right. So, the second stage. We watched the history of civilization, and now let's see what civilization is in our time. Are there some features of the development of civilization with a capital C in our time? First of all, it is the unification of all systems. I've listed some of them here, the most important ones. Common standards have appeared all over the world, metric, inch. The common language is mainly business English, a common financial system, a common information system, the Internet, a common GPS navigation system, a common gendarme appeared in the USA, a common market for products and goods. I can have goods from anywhere on my table today, from Australia, from Mexico, from Argentina there. I remember once in Konakovo, I was surprised to see a box of potatoes on which it was written Tenerife. I was in Tenerife, but I have to say that potatoes are to be brought from Tenerife to Konakovo, for region. Well, it's a fact. Here, and so on. This is a common transport system. Now we are safely flying from country to country. And the pilots no longer have any problems to land at any airport. General medicine. What we are going to now is forcibly driving us, general medicine, the so-called WHO. The general education system is again forcing us into these unified state exams. Here. Maybe we like it, maybe we don't like it. I personally don't like medicine and education, but as they say, what is, that is. And a common, so to speak, legal system, it is also being formed, trying to establish common laws, including criminal ones for the whole world. But at least there are precedents when Milosevic was dealt with, thanks to this Saddam Hussein was dealt with. In other words, there is such a general system. So, you and I need to understand what's going on. There is a unification of the world. I must say that the world currently consists of different civilizations. Here they are shown on the map. This is a Western European civilization. It is also European, it is also American, and Australia is included. This is the Chinese, Indian civilization, Islamic civilization, Slavic civilization, as it is called, or Eurasian civilization, as I call it, the future planetary and space civilization. It is the embryo. Then there is the Latin American civilization. This whole classification is generally accepted. It was introduced by Huntington, but it is already obvious. So the problem is that on the one hand, there is integration and unification, and on the other hand, all this is hindered by ancient roots, traditions, including some religious, economic ones. Different regions live in different economic regimes, some poor, others rich. Now it's all started to be compared, and, of course, no one likes it. The poor regions don't like it. They want to live like the rich. Political, economic problems arise, and so on. In other words, there is a tendency to unite, and there is opposition from these regional systems. What to do about it? Samuel Huntington's remarkable book, The Clash of Civilization, was written on this topic in the 70s. He is a very famous, one of the most famous political scientists in the world, an American as far as I remember. Here is his map. Here are all these collisions. Back in the 70s, he predicted that a clash and even a war of civilizations was waiting for us. Not states. The state level has finished its development, and he turned out to be right, although at first they did not agree with him. What is it about? About the fact that here on the left, you see one picture, on the right another. What does the left picture say? That once families united into communities, then communities united into tribes, then tribal disassembly, tribal wars began. A striking example is the tribal wars of Mongolia, after which Genghis Khan appeared, who brought order. Then, here I am on the left. Just such a moment is reflected here. When there were no nationalities, peoples, states, none of this happened. There were some tribes all over the surface of the earth. But now we already see that we have nationalities, peoples, states. And now there is a Sam Huntington, there is a clash of civilization. In other words, we see how the further, the more the social structure becomes, the more massive it is, the more people live in it. And, accordingly, clashes move from the regime of lightweight fighters in the ring to heavyweight fighters. And now we are super heavy civilizations fighting in the ring as the largest social structures. So, we are at the penultimate stage with you, or rather even at the last stage before the unification of the whole world, into a single humanity. There are clashes between Chinese civilization, Slavic or whatever, Eurasian civilization, Islamic civilization, Western civilization, African civilization, Latin civilization, because they are different cultures. And no one knows how to put them together. Rather, there are practically only two scenarios. Now I will show them, combining them together. Here are the first and the second. On the left is a single faceless human mass. This is a totalitarian version. On the right is a harmonious version. Which of these options awaits us? Well, let's stop first on the left option. What is it? This is a concentration camp and Big Brother, an all-seeing I'm managing from above, internet systems, overseers. Some kind of Skynet that will control every person, his every movement, every step. This is such a concentration camp for everyone, and everyone will be the same. And on the right, we have a harmonious version of unification, when all cultural traditions, all cultural features, all civilizational features are preserved. How do they differ? The totalitarian option is a bone option. It is a dead option. It is an option that, if it ever came in the history of human civilization, it did not last very long. Why? Because this system is lifeless and it is not able to develop. It freezes the achieved level of development and then begins to stagnate, and then it begins to degrade and quickly self-destruct. In other words, the future has no such option as a temporary intermediate stage of restoring order. Well, you know, when the war begins, everyone is taken to the front, starting with total mobilization. There is no time for freedoms there anymore. Maybe this system will be established, but we must jump over the upcoming difficulties and understand that in the future, it doesn't matter if humanity wants to survive, it has no other option but to create a unified humanity, according to the principles of harmony. The principles of harmony were described in my book at the time. The most pleasant option, so familiar to you and me, is our body. If we look inside our body, we will find 12 systems. Each system is very unusual. The skin is the system, the lungs are the respiration, the circulatory system, the nervous system, the peripheral, central nervous system, the digestive system. There are 12 of them. I will not reread them all. Everyone has their own organ. The heart is different from the liver is different from the kidneys, and so on. Everything has its own cells, everything differs in functionality. But note that all these different systems work for the whole organism, for you and me. None of them dominates as a whole, because if suddenly the liver revolts, let's say there is a liver there or a digestive system there, then we will simply die of obesity, right? And so on. That is, each of the subsystems is unique, it is specific. There are different cells there. 200 kinds of cells live in our body, only ours. All these cells, all these subsystems, there are 12 of them, work for you and me so we can communicate, talk and do something outside. If humanity wants to do something outside, that is, in space, it will still have to unite into a harmonious system. That is, it is inevitable. Otherwise, death. Otherwise, the earth will turn into a collective grave for all mankind. For me, these are quite obvious things. Therefore, we have practically no choice. This is what I said. It concerned, I would say, a cultural and geographical association. But in order to do this, we need to create a completely new worldview, a cosmoplanetary worldview. The fact is that all previous worldviews somehow served the tasks that were inherent in some stage of development. Well, the most recent one is a liberal, capitalist worldview. It served the Western goal. The goal was to build a rich society, industry, and so on. Before that, there was a Eurasian worldview. Before that, there was an ancient worldview. There was still some kind of worldview. That is, every time, if you look at history, humanity threw away the old worldview and created a new one. Why? Because if we look at the world through the prism of old values, we will never build a new world with you, and we will never go into space, and we will never unite. Therefore, it is necessary to start with the creation of a cosmoplanetary worldview, which is what we are doing now, discussing this topic. Partly, well, I understand that we skip the questions for understanding. They will be in the end. So, the third stage. What role should Russia play in all this great unification and in the creation of a new worldview? Here, I believe, and I have an evidence base for this, everything is justified in my books, that Russia is just the leader and tuning fork of this future association. There are a lot of prerequisites for this. I'm going to tell you about just one. This is a magnificent, absolutely unique innovation potential in Russia. What is innovation? Innovation is when a person comes up with something new and then does it with everyday life. If he just comes up with it, it's an innovation. Innovation is the introduction of a new way of life, changing our lives through new technologies. But Russia has a magnificent period in the middle of the last century when it proved to the whole world that the Russian people are capable of a magnificent creative impulse, breakthrough, creation of new technologies, new ideas. This potential has not gone anywhere. It is still with us, but it is not in demand. Why it is not in demand is a separate topic. It is not in demand. If it is in demand, then our intellectual forces are in demand in the form of people. Students who take them abroad from the third or fourth year, or rent them in advance or something. Scientists who are taken there are not created for them, not that they take away the forces, of course. These were pleasant conditions for human development, for life. The last 30 or 40 years, there has probably been a general trend. Russia is now being used as a donor of intellectual and creative potential. And those who know this topic well, they will say, yes, it is so. And those who watch our TV shows or very dreary YouTube shows where everything is gone, everyone is gone, they don't tell anything about it. But I have been engaged in innovation processes, both practically and theoretically, for a very long time. I have my own innovative company that sells its products to countries such as Switzerland, Germany, and we are superior in quality to these magnificent countries. And I have written many books on this topic, researched this issue. Moreover, we recently presented the innovative development platforms we are currently engaged in at the Russian Space Society, where the best technologies created by our people will be collected. And believe me, there are just a lot of such technologies. And this is the most important, the fourth resource of Russia. But as you can see, I showed you on purpose. Today exports consist of 63, actually 70, 80% of resource things. Those that nature has given, what is buried in the ground, this is oil, gas, coal, what grows on the ground, forest, and so on. In other words, practically an innovative creative resource is exported from Russia, if it is exported, then in a black way. Here. And there is no such economy that would bring income. It is necessary to create an innovative economy that will bring income to Russia. That's what it's going to be about now. How to do it? Well, first of all, we need to understand once again that information is becoming the main resource now. The main resource becomes, and then will become, the energy of the ether. That's why we went through a period with you. Humanity went through a period when she collected fruits on the surface and hunted. This was the first period. Then agriculture is farming, it's cattle breeding. The next stage is already industry, which began to use mainly genera that are buried in the bowels of the earth. And this stage, they are even talking about it openly, is over. The only resource that we have ahead of us now, a powerful resource, is cosmic, informational, ethereal, whatever. But we are just beginning to realize this problem, not to master it, but we are just beginning to understand that based on old resources, of course, old resources should not be written off, just like we do not write off agriculture, industry, and just like we do not write off the fact that we collect mushrooms in the forest, so to speak, we fish. No, all of this should remain, but the emphasis should be shifted to another area, to the fourth level of development. And here it is in the Russian economy today. Today's Russian economy is such a plucked Christmas tree where the main income comes from raw materials. You see, right? Industry is barely, so to speak, unique objects. Some things are being done, they're in the form of nuclear power plants. But these are all trifles. Intellectual potential, creative potential is at zero. And our task with you is to create such an economy of the export economy of Russia in the future, which will be everything. Eco-settlements that will provide us with a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. And industrial agriculture that will create mass products and raw materials that we have quite a lot in the bowels. And unique objects which we have learned to make spaceships, icebreakers, nuclear power plants, and so on. At the top of all this splendor will be an innovative economy. What is an innovative economy? We can talk about this topic for a long time, but believe me, the income from the innovative economy can be more than from all other industries. I know that for sure. And then, at the present time, our country can be depicted like this. The share of raw materials is very high, science-intensive production is a little bit, innovation is at zero. We are almost now slowly leaving space, and we need to create such a structure stable in the form of a tetraeder, where there will be all raw materials, high-tech products and on the Vatican, and this will only allow us to go into outer space and extract clean energy there, at least this. Here. And my dream, and I hope it will become your dream, this is an innovative Russia. Russia is not as a territory from which natural resources are exported, but Russia as a country, in which people, being born and raising children, create a unique creative population that will create more and more new technologies, that will solve all the old problems, because, believe my life experience, nothing can be solved to the end. Without new technologies, new solutions. No cuts in consumption, no savings, no political games, no demonstrations. Rallies solve the problems that humanity faces in society, and so on. Only new solutions solve problems to the end. New solutions that turn into new technologies, new industry. Therefore, only this will save us. And it will save us, and it will save the whole world. So, we need to make a global innovation leap. And Dostoevsky once wrote a very good, so to speak, phrase. He wrote, "Give the Russian boys a map of the starry sky in the evening, and they will return it to you in the morning corrected." He accurately noticed the national peculiarity. This is the very seed of our character. We are not satisfied with what we have. Even the starry sky we are ready to remake, even the map to fix, not to mention us, about our lives. And the future role of Russia in the harmonious transformation of humanity and going into space. Now, since the 2000th year, we are beginning to move into a completely new phase. I'll return it to this one. In the third, look, the third stage is when we have to create a completely new worldview, a new science, a new amount of technology, a new world order. That is, everything must be updated on the basis of a new worldview. And this is the role of our Russian civilization, which is called Eurasian, cosmoplanetary, whatever. And so, that's when we, our Russian star of captivating happiness, will sparkle in the firmament of the world in this way. And most importantly, we are going back, our strategy for Russia. Here, in the lower left corner, there is a monument to Minin and Pozarsky, not by chance, in the right, so to speak. This is a transition from the exit of the community of space civilizations. Why is the monument to Minin and Pozarsky depicted here? And why is there a tablet instead of a bill? A ray of light instead of a ball, and a satellite flies out of the hand there. The fact is that, as you remember, Minin and Pozarsky, they came when Russia was under the rule of a foreign state, Polish in particular. The Poles were sitting in the Kremlin, so they ruled the country. I didn't like it very much, and there was no such ruler, there was no such czar, whom Poles came and threw off. And then a popular militia movement arose among the people. Here, the merchant and the prince are the middle layer. They gathered the people's forces, the people's militia began, which threw off this Polish yoke, this power, which no longer suited Russia. And after that, independent development began. From my point of view, we now have to do the same. Only the middle layer, to whom I am speaking, should understand that the most important strategic goal of the offensive for Russia is to create innovative potential and develop innovation. Help all the inventors around you with something. Help as much as you can, because it is this direction that should become the main one in order for Russia to get out of the impasse in which it has now fallen. It's not even a dead end, it's a transition of development to a new one. Well, I almost met the time. I finish at 10 minutes to 10, and the time is still 10 minutes for questions. Thank you for your attention. So, if you want to get acquainted, I repeat, with all my calculations, they are on my website. You just type Sukhonov Sergey Ivanovich. There are about 130 entries on YouTube. About 26 books on the Suhonos website. Here are listed those books that relate specifically to the relay race of civilization. There are other books. This is where I sort of end my presentation and ask you to include my image on the screen of the presenter Alexei. And I'm waiting for questions. Thank you for your attention.